I never imagined my life could take such a sharp turn during something as ordinary as party preparations. I'm Rachel, a devoted wife to Mark and a caring mother to Liam. Our lives were predictable, even mundane at times, but I found comfort in that routine. That day, however, would change everything I thought I knew about myself. It was a warm Saturday afternoon, and the sun filtered through the trees in our backyard, casting playful shadows on the ground as I prepared for Liam's party, high school graduation party. A milestone I'd eagerly anticipated for months. Mark was at the office, buried in another last-minute project, leaving me to tackle the decorations solo. It wasn't the first time I'd shouldered the workload, and I convinced myself I didn't mind. I climbed onto an old wobbly ladder to string fairy lights along the pergola. Being precariously, I stretched my arms as far as I could, determined to make everything look perfect. The ladder swayed slightly beneath me. My weight shifted, a flicker of unease crossed my mind, but I brushed it off. I'd done this countless times. Then a voice startled me from behind, nearly making me lose my balance. "Need some help, Mrs. Connor?" The deep tone was unmistakable. I turned sharply, gripping the ladder for support, and there he was, Liam, my best friend Diane's son. He had grown so much since I last saw him. His once gangly frame was now filled out, and a quiet confidence radiated from him, catching me off guard. "Oh, Liam." Startled, I steadied the ladder and my voice. "What brings you here?" He smiled, the kind that could disarm anyone. "Mom sent me. She said you might need a hand with the party setup. I saw you on that ladder and thought I'd better make sure you don't fall." I laughed nervously as I climbed down. "I could use a little help, thank you, Liam." As I stepped onto solid ground, he steadied the ladder, our hands brushing briefly, stirring something within me. A spark I hadn't felt in years hit me, but I quickly brushed it off as just a surprise. Liam followed me to the patio, where I had laid out decorations. "These need to go up around the yard," I said, pointing to the tangled lights and garlands. "It's not much, but it can be tricky alone." "No problem, Mrs. Connor," he replied, rolling up his sleeves. "I've got this." I smiled. "You're not a kid anymore, call me Rachel." He hesitated, then nodded. "All right, Rachel." I worked side by side, hanging lights, arranging tables, and tying balloons. I kept it casual, asking about college and summer plans. His polite, engaging answers caught my attention, but it was his presence that truly captivated me. He moved with a quiet confidence that was magnetic. Our hands brushed occasionally as we passed decorations, making my heart skip a beat. I couldn't explain it, nor did I want to linger on it. This was Liam, the boy I'd known since he was young. Diapers aside, something about him felt different. He paused, smoothing a tablecloth with effortless precision. "Liam must be proud to have such a dedicated mom," he said, his warm gaze meeting mine, making my cheeks flush. I laughed lightly, though my voice wavered. "Well, I try my best." We kept working, transforming the backyard into a festive space. Yet, no matter how busy I was, I couldn't shake the lingering feelings Liam stirred in me. By the time we finished, the sun had begun to set. As the sun cast long shadows across the lawn, I stepped back to admire our work. Grateful for his help, I felt a swirl of emotions lie beneath the surface. When he packed up to leave, his smile lingered longer than expected. "I'll see you at the party tomorrow, Rachel," he said casually, but his eyes hinted at something more. "See you tomorrow," I replied, my voice softer than I meant. Watching him walk away, I felt a strange mix of gratitude and unease. Just a moment, I told myself. Nothing more. But deep down I knew otherwise. It wasn't simple. Something had changed, and I couldn't shake the spark ignited within me. The next day, I was up early, racing through the final touches for Liam's graduation party. The decorations Liam and I crafted looked stunning in the morning light. The fairy lights glimmered softly, hinting at their evening glow. Tables were set, balloons danced in the breeze, and everything felt just right. My thoughts kept drifting back to Liam. I couldn't shake the memory of his touch or the warmth of his smile lingering in my mind. I told myself it was ridiculous. He was practically family. But no matter how hard I tried to push those thoughts away, they crept back, unwelcome and unsettling. By the time the guests arrived, I had switched into hostess mode, greeting friends and family with a bright smile, ensuring everyone felt welcome. Liam was the star. Seeing him laugh with his friends filled me with pride. Mark was there too, but he felt distant, busy chatting with colleagues, clearly focused on networking rather than celebrating. As I moved between tables, ensuring everything ran smoothly, I spotted Liam near the drinks table, surrounded by a small group laughing at something he had just said. His charisma was magnetic, and he seemed completely at ease. People mingled effortlessly, and when our eyes locked across the crowd, he shot me a small, almost conspiratorial smile. My heart skipped a beat, and I quickly turned away, focusing on refilling a tray of appetizers, but his gaze lingered, sending a shiver down my spine. Later, as I headed to the kitchen, I felt a presence beside me. "Mrs. Connor," Liam said, his voice low and teasing. I turned to find him standing just a little too close. "How's the party treating you?" I asked, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "It's great," he replied. "You've been busy all evening," I said with a grin. "Thought you might need a break." I laughed softly, keeping it light, just part of the hostess gig. "I'll take a break once everything's settled." "Let me help," he offered, reaching for the empty tray. Our fingers brushed, and that familiar spark jolted through me. I quickly pulled back, hoping he didn't notice my slight tremble. "Thanks, but I've got it," I replied, trying to sound casual. He didn't push it further. His eyes said it all. "If you insist," he replied, stepping back with a small smile. "But don't forget to save some time for yourself, Rachel." He walked away, leaving me with my thoughts racing. His use of my first name felt like a challenge. I shook my head, chastising myself. He was just being kind, right? As the evening went on, I found myself drawn to Liam repeatedly. It wasn't intentional, or at least I told myself it wasn't, but our paths kept crossing. He was always there, by the drinks table, at the buffet near the patio. Every interaction crackled with energy. At one point, I caught him staring from across the garden. His unreadable expression made my cheeks flush. I quickly turned away, pretending to focus on the decorations, but his gaze lingered. As the party wound down and guests started to leave, I felt a mix of relief and disappointment. The house grew quieter. Fairy lights cast a warm glow over the backyard. I was gathering empty glasses when I felt someone approach. "Need a hand?" Liam asked, his voice breaking the quiet. I looked up to find him beside me, his expression soft. "You've already done so much," I said, smiling despite myself. "You should be enjoying the evening." "I am," he replied simply, our eyes locking for a moment. We stood in silence, the air thick with unspoken words, while laughter and conversation floated around us. Guests felt distant, almost irrelevant. My pulse quickened as I looked away, focusing on the glasses in my hands. "Well, thank you for everything," I said, trying to regain my composure. "Anytime," he replied, his voice low. There was something in his tone that made my heart race. As he turned to leave, our hands brushed again, sending an electric jolt through me. This time I didn't pull away immediately, and neither did he. For a brief moment our fingers lingered and I felt a spark. Emotion surged as he whispered, "Good night, Rachel." My reply trembled, "Good night, Liam." I watched him fade into the garden's darkness, my heart racing with guilt and exhilaration. I told myself it was just a moment, but deep down I knew it was more. Something had shifted, and there was no turning back after Liam's graduation party. It was a whirlwind of tidying up and getting back into my routine. I pushed thoughts of B aside, convincing myself it was just a fleeting moment sparked by the event's chaos. But no matter how hard I tried, his smile, the warmth of his touch, and the intensity of his gaze kept replaying in my mind. Meanwhile, Mark was lost in work, and our conversations felt brief and transactional, consumed by schedules and errands. Updates on Liam. Nothing new, but the silence between us had turned unbearable. Once comfortable, it now felt suffocating. One morning, feeling the walls closing in, I headed to my favorite cafe downtown, my sanctuary. There I could sip a cappuccino, read a book, or just lose myself in the soft hum of chatter. The familiar scent of freshly brewed coffee greeted me as I stepped inside, instantly calming my nerves. I ordered my usual cappuccino. Scanning the cafe for an open seat, I spotted him, Liam, in the corner, laptop open, notebook beside him. He was focused, brow furrowed, tapping away. For a moment I thought about slipping out unnoticed, but then he looked up. His face lit up. "Rachel!" he exclaimed, closing his laptop and waving me over. What a surprise! My heart raced as I hesitated, but there was no polite way to refuse. I walked over trying to play it cool. "Hey Liam," I said, forcing a smile. "Didn't expect to see you here." "Neither did I," he replied, standing briefly as I took a seat. "I like to change up my study spots. Keeps things fresh." I nodded, focusing on my coffee cup instead of the way his eyes lingered on me. "Nice spot," I said, taking a sip. We sat in silence, the quiet heavy yet oddly comfortable. Finally Liam leaned in, breaking the stillness. "You know, what I expected Greg's wife to be caught me off guard." "What do you mean?" I blinked. He smiled, his gaze thoughtful. "I always imagined someone more reserved, but you're so lively and interesting." I laughed, a bit nervous. "I'll take that as a compliment," I said, trying to lighten the mood. "It is," he replied sincerely. Our conversation flowed effortlessly from there. Books, movies, even dreams we hadn't shared with others. He listened intently, his responses thoughtful. For the first time in ages, I felt truly seen. Hours flew by, and suddenly the cafe was nearly empty. I glanced at the clock, shocked by how late it had gotten. "I didn't realize it was so late," I said, gathering my things. Liam leaned back, his eyes locked on mine. "I really enjoyed this, Rachel," he said softly. "Maybe we could do it again sometime?" My heart raced as I hesitated. "Maybe," I replied, surprising myself with my honesty as we stood by the door. Our goodbyes were electric. Liam's hand brushed mine, a fleeting touch that ignited a familiar spark. "Take care, Rachel," he said, his voice low. "You too, Liam," I whispered, walking to my car. A whirlwind of guilt, excitement, and something unnameable swirling inside me. I tried to convince myself it was harmless, just two people sharing a moment, but deep down I knew it was more. The next few days were a roller coaster. Every time I passed the cafe or thought about our conversation, emotions surged. Adrenaline surged through me, quickly followed by guilt. How could I feel this way about Liam, my best friend's son? It was madness. Yet, no matter how hard I tried to rationalize it, the truth was clear. He had ignited something in me that I thought was long gone. Life with Mark had turned into a monotonous routine, and I had forgotten the thrill of being noticed and appreciated. One evening as I prepped dinner, Mark strolled in, rambling about a work project. He barely glanced at me before heading to the living room. I stared at the cutting board, hands trembling, the ache of loneliness almost unbearable. My thoughts drifted to Liam, his gaze, the way he listened like I was the only one that mattered. It was intoxicating, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the memory. By the time I went to bed, one thing was clear. I wasn't ready to let go of the connection with Liam. Scared me, but it made me feel alive like never before. The future was uncertain, but I knew this wasn't the end of the story. Not yet. It all unfolded on a rainy afternoon, one of those gray days when everything feels heavier and quieter. The house was empty. Mark was working late, and Liam was out with friends. I had been battling a frozen computer for hours, the screen taunting me. Frustrated, I recalled something Liam had said in one of our chats. He was great with tech. Tech troubles got me thinking fast. I grabbed my phone and dialed his number. "Hi, Rachel," he answered, his voice warm and easy. "What's up?" I hesitated, feeling silly for calling over something so small. "Sorry to bother you, Liam," I said, keeping it casual. "I'm having some computer issues, and I remembered you're good with this stuff. Mind helping?" "Of course," he replied instantly. "I'll be right over." When he arrived, the rain pattered outside, amplifying the quiet. A tension crackled in the air as Liam entered, filling the room with a mix of comfort and unease. He flashed a quick smile, shaking rain from his jacket. "Where's the patient?" he asked, grinning playfully. I guided him to the desk, captivated as he sat and began tinkering with the computer. His confidence was magnetic, and I lingered nearby, pretending to tidy up while stealing glances. "Just a few tweaks," he murmured, his voice low, focused on the screen. Our shoulders brushed as I leaned in slightly. As I leaned in to see what he was doing, his innocent touch sent a wave of warmth through me. I tried to step back, but the closeness was electric. When he turned to explain, our faces were inches apart. I noticed the raindrops clinging to his hair and the way his eyes searched mine, hesitant yet filled with unspoken words. We locked eyes, the silence thick and charged. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure he could hear it. In a brief moment of overwhelming emotion, our closeness crossed a line neither of us anticipated. I stepped back, heart pounding, realizing the gravity of the situation. It felt like the world outside vanished, leaving just the two of us. His gesture was unexpected, triggering a flood of complicated feelings, longing, guilt, and an ache for connection I'd buried for years. When we finally broke apart, I was breathless, my mind racing. "We can't do this," I whispered. Liam stepped back, his voice trembling, regret and longing etched on his face. "I know," he said softly. "I'm sorry." The words lingered, heavy in the air, and neither of us moved. The weight of the moment was suffocating, yet I felt no regret. His touch, his kiss, they had ignited something within me that I thought was long gone. Liam turned back to the computer, his movements slow, as if he were trying to regain his composure. I stood frozen, fingers gripping the desk, struggling to steady myself. Breathing in, the room felt suffocating, heavy with unspoken words. When he finally fixed the computer, he stood, offering a small, hesitant smile. "It's all set now," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you," I replied, my voice just as faint. He paused, as if wanting to say more, but instead grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. "Take care, Rachel." He glanced back one last time before stepping into the rain. As the door clicked shut, I leaned against it, my emotions swirling chaotically. Exhilaration and shame swirled within me as I felt the ghost of his lips on mine, the warmth of his touch. Every part of me screamed this was wrong, yet another part, one I wasn't ready to confront, craved more. I stood there, staring at the rain streaking down the window, realizing the kiss had transformed everything. It was no longer a fleeting connection. It was real, tangible, and terrifying. But deep down I knew it wasn't over, not yet. The kiss should have been the end. I convinced myself it was a mistake, a moment of weakness, and promised to move on. But I couldn't shake it or him. Every time I walked by that desk, memories flooded back. The warmth of his hands, the intensity in his eyes, the way he made me feel alive again. I hadn't felt that way in years, and it terrified me. I buried myself in daily routines, cooking, cleaning, doing everything I could to distract myself. Nothing had changed, yet everything felt different. Mark was buried in work, our chats felt empty. Liam was off with friends, reveling in his newfound freedom, leaving me alone with my thoughts. No matter how hard I tried to shake them, they always returned to Liam. It all began with a simple text. "Hi. Hi, Rachel. Just checking in. How's the computer holding up?" Casual, innocent, but it sent my heart racing. I stared at the screen. For what felt like forever before finally typing. "It's working perfectly, thanks again for your help." His reply came almost instantly. "Glad to hear it. Let me know if you need anything else." I should have left it at that. I should have put my phone down and walked away. But instead I typed another message. "Thank you, Liam. I really appreciated it more than you know." There was a pause before his next reply, longer this time. When it came, it was just 3 words. "Anytime, Rachel." Those 3 words opened a door. We couldn't close the gap, but over the next few days our texts ramped up. It started with light jokes and movie banter, but there was an electric undercurrent. Each message pulled me closer to the edge of something thrilling. Soon we set a meeting. It was a Saturday afternoon. Mark was stuck at work and Liam had plans. The house was empty, and Liam proposed a quiet walk away from it all. My heart raced as I typed the address of a small park on the edge of town. When I arrived, he was already there, leaning against a tree, hands in pockets. He looked up, a smile spreading across his face that made my knees weak. "Hi," he said softly. "Hi," I replied, my voice barely a whisper. We walked side by side along the path, our footsteps blending with the rustling leaves. Small talk filled the air, but the tension between us was palpable. Every glance, every brush of our arms crackled with unspoken emotion. We found a secluded spot where the path curved around a shimmering pond, but my heart pounded too loudly to notice. Liam stopped, turned to me and said, "Rachel," his voice trembling. "I can't stop thinking about you." I looked away, unable to meet his gaze. "Liam, we can't," I started, but the words felt hollow. He stepped closer, his hand brushing against me. "I know it's wrong," he said, voice low and urgent, "but I can't ignore this. I don't want to." I closed my eyes, rational thoughts screaming at me to walk away. But when his hand gently took mine, I didn't pull back. I looked up, and the moment our eyes met, my resolve crumbled. He leaned in, and when our lips met, the world faded away. The emotional tension between us surfaced briefly, a stark reminder of the confusion and distance I struggled with inside. Pulling me closer, a rush of emotions surged: passion, guilt, and an overwhelming sense of inevitability. When we finally pulled apart, we were both breathless. "We can't keep doing this," I whispered, though I didn't believe it. "I know," he replied, his forehead resting against mine. "But I can't stay away from you." Neither could I. As much as I hated myself for it, I couldn't deny the truth. I didn't want to stay away from him either. This wasn't just a mistake anymore. It was something more. Something I couldn't walk away from. Deep down I knew it. I was torn. Every moment with Liam was electric, but guilt loomed large, gnawing at me. Looking at Mark sparked shame, and our conversations felt empty, like bad acting. I couldn't keep juggling these two worlds. Something had to change, and it had to begin with honesty. One evening after Liam was asleep, I knew it was time. Mark had just arrived. He came home from work, tie slightly loosened, looking exhausted. He gave me a tired smile as he set his briefcase down. "Hey," he said, leaning in to kiss my cheek. "Hi," I replied, my voice trembling. He paused, brow furrowing. "Everything okay?" I nodded toward the dining table where 2 glasses of wine awaited. "Can we talk?" Concern flashed across his face, but he followed me to the table and sat down. The weight of what I was about to say felt suffocating, and for a moment I considered backing out. But then I saw, his weary eyes reflected the distance that had grown between us. I couldn't hold back any longer. "I need to tell you something," I said, hands trembling as I gripped my glass. Mark leaned in, serious. "Okay," he replied, cautious. I took a deep breath, the words stuck in my throat. I've been unfaithful." The confession tumbled out like stones. Silence hung heavy. Mark's face went pale and he leaned back. Liam slumped in his chair, as if my confession had physically pushed him away. He whispered, "Diane's son." I nodded, tears brimming. "I didn't mean for it to happen," I stammered, my voice cracking. "It started as nothing, just small moments, conversations, but it became more." Mark stood up, pacing the room. "How long?" he demanded, his voice rising. "A few weeks," I admitted, hands trembling as I set the glass down. "I'm so sorry, Mark. I never wanted this. I never meant to hurt you." "Hurt me? You betrayed me, Rachel. You betrayed our family." His disbelief hit me like a ton of bricks. I crumbled, tears streaming down my face. "I know," I stammered, hating myself for it. "But we've been so distant, Mark." I felt invisible, and when Liam... I couldn't finish. Mark stopped pacing, his face a storm of anger and sadness. "So this is my fault?" he shot back, voice cutting. "No," I blurted. "That's not what I'm saying. I take responsibility. I regret what I've done, but we've both let things fall apart. Mark and I have grown so distant." I was weak. He ran a hand through his hair, breathing heavily. "You're right," he finally said, his voice quieter. "We've grown apart. I thought working hard and providing for the family was enough, but maybe I've neglected you, neglected us." I looked up at him, hope flickering in my chest. "Mark, I love you," I said, my voice steady despite the tears. "I want to fix this. I want to fix us, but I can't keep hiding this from you." He sat back. He hung his head in his hands, and we sat in silence, the weight of my confession heavy between us. Finally, he looked up, eyes filled with pain and determination. "If we're going to fix this," he said firmly, "we need help. We can't do this alone." Relief flooded through me as I nodded. "I'll do whatever it takes," I replied. Mark sighed, leaning back in his chair. "I'm not ready to forgive you, Rachel, not yet, but I'm willing to try, for us, for Liam." Tears streamed down my face as I reached for his hand. "Thank you." That night, I whispered for the first time in years. We really talked. It wasn't easy or pretty, but it was honest. Painful, yes, but a sliver of hope emerged. We had a long road ahead, but we were finally taking the first step. The days after my confession felt like a storm. The air in our home was heavy with unspoken words and lingering pain. Mark avoided me. retreating into work in silence during meals. I gave him space, knowing he needed time to process everything, but the distance between us felt unbearable. I wasn't sure if we'd ever truly recover. Then Mark broke the silence one evening. He walked into the living room, weary but resolute. "Rachel," he began, his voice steady, "if we're going to fix what's broken, we need to make an effort, both of us." His words hit me like a lifeline. I nodded, my voice trembling. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes." We decided to see a counselor together, a neutral space where we could start to heal. We aired our grievances and started to pinpoint where things went wrong. Those initial sessions were tough. Mark's anger and hurt poured out, raw and unfiltered. I faced the pain I had caused him, and it was agonizing to see how deeply I had wounded him. But these sessions weren't just about the affair. They pushed us to confront the cracks in our relationship that had been widening for years. We discussed the growing distance, the lack of communication, and how we had drifted apart. For the first time in years, we dropped the facade and got honest outside of therapy. Mark started coming home earlier, and I greeted him with warmth instead of exhaustion. We cooked dinner together, something we hadn't done in ages. At first, it felt awkward, like we were pretending, but those moments gradually became genuine. One evening, after a simple dinner, he suggested a walk. The air was crisp, and the sky blazed with orange and pink as the sun dipped. We strolled in silence, but it wasn't the heavy silence of before. This felt serene. "I've been thinking," Mark broke the quiet, "about everything about us." I glanced at him, my heart racing. He halted, turning to face me, his expression softer than it had been in weeks. "I'm not going to pretend I'm over what happened," he admitted. "But I realize I played a part in why As I arrived, I realized that working hard to provide for the family wasn't enough. I hadn't seen how lonely you'd become, and for that I'm sorry." Tears filled my eyes as I reached for his hand. "Mark, I can't undo the past, but I want to make things right. I want to rebuild what we've lost, if you'll let me." He squeezed my hand, his gaze unwavering. "I'm willing to try," he replied. That moment marked the first real step toward healing. It wasn't a grand gesture or a dramatic declaration of love, but it was genuine. A promise to move forward, together, no matter how tough the road ahead. We rediscovered each other in small, meaningful ways. We spent more time as a family, taking Liam for picnics and enjoying board games on quiet evenings. Mark surprised me with sweet gestures, a bouquet of my favorite flowers, a handwritten note on the counter. I reciprocated, showing him how much he meant to me. One evening, after an emotional counseling session, Mark and we sat together on the couch. He looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen in years, soft, tender, full of hope. "Rachel," he said, his voice quiet but firm, "I believe we can get through this. It won't be easy and it won't happen overnight, but I love you and I want us to be happy again." Tears streamed down my cheeks, but this time they were tears of relief and gratitude. "I love you too, Mark," I whispered, my voice breaking. "Thank you for giving us a second chance." We embraced, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt truly at peace. It wasn't perfect, wounds to heal, trust to rebuild, but it was a start, and that was enough. Months passed, and while the road to rebuilding our marriage was rocky, Mark and I were finding our way back to each other. The cracks remained, but we were mending them step by step. Counseling guided us through tough conversations, and our efforts to reconnect as a couple began to pay off. For the first time in years, I felt like we were truly on the right path. One evening, Mark came home early, a bouquet of my favorite pink and white roses in hand. Surprised, I looked up from the kitchen counter. "For you," he said, smiling as he offered them to me. "They're beautiful," I replied, inhaling their sweet scent. My throat tightened with emotion. Not because of the gesture, but the thought behind it. He stepped closer, placing a hand on my shoulder. "I know I don't say it enough, Rachel, but I'm so grateful for. Thank you for everything we've been through," he said, his words bringing tears to my eyes. "I'm grateful too," I whispered, my voice trembling. Later that evening, we sat on the couch, his arm around me, a comforting warmth I hadn't felt in years. Liam was out with friends, and the house was quiet, just the soft hum of the TV in the background. "Do you remember our first date?" Mark asked suddenly, a small smile on his lips. I laughed softly, leaning into him. "Of course. You were so nervous you spilled your drink on me." he chuckled, shaking his head. I laughed instead of getting upset. That's when I knew I wanted to spend my life with him. Hearing those words now, after everything we'd been through, felt like a balm to my soul. I'm glad you still feel that way, I whispered. I do, he said firmly, tightening his grip on my hand. I'm sorry it took so long to show it. I'm not perfect, Rachel, but I'm willing to fight for us, for our family. Tears filled my eyes as I looked at him, seeing the sincerity in his gaze. I'm ready to fight for us. I love you, Mark, more than words can express. The months of effort, late-night talks, and moments of vulnerability have led us here, to this quiet yet profound moment. We've changed for the better, learning to appreciate and communicate with each other. The next weekend, Mark proposed a family outing. Let's do something together, just the three of us, he said. Liam was excited about the idea, and we decided to have a picnic in the park, a spot that once held bittersweet memories. But this time, it felt like a fresh start. We spread a blanket under a large oak tree, surrounded by nature's soft hum. Mark and Liam played catch while I relaxed, soaking in a peace I hadn't felt in years. Their laughter echoed, and I couldn't help but smile, feeling warmth in my chest that I thought was gone forever. When Mark returned, he plopped down beside me, his arm brushed against mine. This is nice, he said, his voice full of contentment. It is, I agreed, resting my head on his shoulder as the sun set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. Mark turned to me. Rachel, I want you to know how much you mean to me. You and Liam are my world, and I'll do everything to keep us together. Tears pricked my eyes as I looked at him. I feel the same way, I said, my voice steady despite the emotion in my chest. We've been through so much, but I know we're stronger together. We faced anything. As we watched the sunset, hands intertwined, I realized our painful journey had transformed us. We rediscovered each other, learned to forgive, and rebuilt our family on love and trust. It wasn't perfect, nothing ever is, but it was real. With the first stars twinkling in the evening sky, a quiet hope blossomed within me. Together we could tackle whatever challenges awaited. This was our new beginning. For the first time in ages, I felt ready to embrace change. This experience highlighted the power of communication, honesty, and effort in relationships. Life can create distance, even with those we cherish, but it doesn't have to last. Tackling issues directly, no matter how tough, is the first step to healing. Forgiveness, both for others and ourselves, is essential for progress. Love isn't just about big gestures. It thrives in the little things. Everyday efforts to stay connected matter. Never take your loved ones for granted. Cherish them, communicate, and fight for your relationships daily.